from the aerospace design. Over to you, Mr. Vaidya.
Yeah, so thank you very much for a very good introduction. Good afternoon to all of you, especially Dr. Pillai and Sri Vijayanand, with whom I had worked for last more than 20 years, and a very pleasant experience working with both of them, and especially when it came to the privatization of the PSLV. I think we had lots of meetings together and were able to discuss many items as to how public-private partnership can really put it forward. So after the two stalwarts have given this brief into what is happening with Indian space program and with the Defense Research Organization, and today is being very specific WebEx for the space. I think I have very little role to play in this because both of them have explained what is happening with ISRO, what is happening at government level, and what is that we are going to see as an industry. So what I have done is I am basically going to talk about our participation and what are our learnings, and if those learnings, if this industry can find useful to explore this huge opportunity which is going to come. I think our last 30 years existence in this as a partners to Indian space program and Indian defense program will be worthwhile. So I'm taking you back way back in 1985. You know that Godrej is known for the consumer products. I mean, we have never been into these high technology areas or high technology products. It was the ISRO who thought that there is some merit in the manufacturing techniques what we imply at Godrej in the various products like our locks, and that time we were making manual typewriters, very precision items were getting produced, and then we had refrigerators and washing machines and other many utilities what you have seen. So starting in a small way, making few critical components in titanium for the satellites in 85, we got into 1989 manufacturing the Vikas engine, which is a French technology, and we were given a chance to manufacture the 100% of this Vikas engine parts and do a pre-assembly, and then ISRO will take over from the pre-assembly to the final assembly and integrate along with the stage. And that time it used to be only a PS2, that is the second stage of our Polar satellite launch vehicle. But as this engine really got tested and proved and flown successfully in PSLV, it got applications into the GSLV Mark II as the boosters for the first stage, and then it continued to use in GSLV Mark the stage 2 also, GS2 stage also, and now it is being planned in GSLV Mark III. So far we have produced more than 100 engines, and we have a very good manufacturing understanding now about what exactly is the ISRO's requirements and how one should really get involved into manufacturing of space entities. So I will just give you first a brief about, say, what is difference between what we make for Indian space program and what we do for Indian defense program. And also when we are talking about to have a good product mix, if we are also looking for export, and export mainly if you are looking for good numbers, it comes from the civil aviation. So the difference between the three entities is that ISRO has a very planned missions, and for every mission, whether it is for the remote sensing, whether it is for communication, or it is for the interplanetary mission like Chandrayaan and Mangalayaan, and now we are also having a probe which is going to go on to the sun, that is Aditya, and so many missions which are being planned beyond Mars also. So I think the defense, when we make a missile, we have to understand that as on date there are only single shot devices. I mean, we don't have, at least in space we have started talking about the reusable launch vehicles, but in missiles we still don't have reusable missiles. I mean, it goes, puts the weapon, and then comes back and once again takes the new one. So these are all single shot devices. So whenever it is going to get fired in next 10 to 12 years, that's the life what we give to the missile. It should be really successful. I mean, just to exaggerate it in a lighter way, if you remember Mr. India, the Mogambo, I mean, if he pulls the lever, then the missile should get fired. That should be the readiness of our things, and not now, but even for next 10 years and 12 years. When it comes to space, there are two aspects. One is, of course, the launch vehicle, which is similar to the missile, and still we don't have a reusable launch vehicle, so these are also single shot devices. This Vikas engine, which is a very particular engine, what we made, you cannot test it at ground. The cryogenic engine, what we are making, at least 20 seconds, 40 seconds, you can do a testing, and then it can be integrated into a launch vehicle. Whereas Vikas engine, you need to fire straight into in the launch vehicle itself. And similarly, I think most of the engines which are used in missiles also are required to be fired when you are on actually a mission. You cannot do a testing and take it. Plus, there is no way you can stop in between and rectify. So you have to be first time and every time right in this manufacturing setups. But now when go to from missiles or launch vehicles to a satellite, the satellite has a life of 7 to 10 years, and now we are talking about satellite life going beyond 10 years, 12 years and 14 years. So all the components what we are going to make should have the cyclicity or the creep resistance or the fatigue, which is going to have more than 10 years of life. So any small mistake in our manufacturing can lead to a disaster. A working satellite will suddenly get conked off if any part misbehaves in that. Secondly, I think if we don't make the precision in the launch vehicles as well as in the satellites, for a geostationary satellite orbit, which is about 36,000 kilometers, will require precision launch. That means we should not really consume more fuel on the satellite, because it is directly proportional to its life what we are going to get it. So we have to preserve this particular fuel on the satellite. So the launch vehicle requires to launch this satellite as close as the 36,000 kilometers, and then initial orbit is always going to be a non-circular. It will be always a elliptical with apogee, perigee, and then the small thrusters on the satellites are going to make the corrections, and we are going to get a circular orbit. And once it reaches into the final orbit, then also it is going to require some kind of a correction to keep in its loop the slot which is allocated by the international body. And there are various forces which are going to obstruct or destruct this particular location, and then you have to bring it back. So the fuel on the satellite needs to be preserved for 7 years and 10 years. The second aspect is the sun facing area of the satellite is going to see a very high positive temperature. It will be about 150 to 200 as I understand, and the rest of the area which is under shadow, which is on the back of the sun, is going to have exactly the reverse. It will be minus 150 to 200 degrees centigrade. So the components will have a thin line separating a plus 200 and minus 200. So the tolerances what are being kept by the ISRO scientist, or which is need of the hour, is so critical, and we cannot really do all kinds of this test and the simulations. I mean, we have been talking and listening to both the previous speakers, Dr. Pillai and Sri Vijayanand, about need for the test facilities. The need for the test facilities and the certification comes in because the conditions on the earth and the conditions in the space are going to be quite different, and they are going to be very dynamic, and such kind of a simulations to happen on the ground is not going to be that very easy task. It requires really a very high degree of thinking before we can really realize this kind of test facilities. And when this is happening, I think what we have to really work, and how we got a little success what we are having today, is I think there are 2-3 things what we did very well in these areas, and I will just put that as a recommendations to you to ponder on. And then if you are exploring the current good news which has come up from the government of India of allowing private partnership into the space exploration, and the startups have already taken up, at least I know, more than 7-8 startups who have really taken a good momentum, and they are very progressing very well as far as making launch vehicles, something like SpaceX and the American companies who are like planning to do it here, and similarly in the satellites. So, as I said, the requirements and the brief what I gave earlier is only to get you what I'm going to now share. So, first I will go back to 1985. So, that was our phase where we started learning. Now, what is learning for a manufacturing engineer? It is learning is first the raw materials, the kind of raw materials what we use in Indian space program or even any aerospace or the defense activities. We will be using very high percentage of titanium, Inconel, aluminium, columbium. So these are all very exotic alloys and have chosen for a specific purpose or for the specific properties which it behaves or delivers and can sustain the kind of loads or the environment it has to see. And then only this kind of launch vehicles or satellites can be built. Now these alloys, even though they have very specialized capabilities or the properties, they are not good as far as the manufacturing is concerned. And when I am saying not good, I am comparing with the rest of the mild steel, stainless steels, which are routine alloys what we use. As compared to that, these alloys are very difficult to form, these alloys are very difficult to machine, these alloys are very difficult to weld, these alloys are very difficult to protect, and you require some special coatings or you require some special barrier coatings like thermal barrier coating or something like that to enhance further its properties and deliver its intended use. So that is the first thing. The second important thing in this is I think the standards. As a country, India doesn't really have good standards and specification of our own. So we are dependent on the Russian standards from where we started, and then we are going to be dependent on the French standards, American standards. And you know that every standard, even if we are using Indian standard which is written in our regional languages or even in English, interpretation of the standards becomes always a problem. And then when we are going to have a standard coming from Russia or standards coming from France and other countries which are written in their own languages, it's correct grammatical as well as the technical translations, and then its interpretations, and then linking. Because the second exercise what we did when we were working in development phase of BrahMos, that we were given first about 1000 Go standards and O standards for the BrahMos, and those referred to another 1000 Go and O standards, and that continued. Finally, we ended up reading, understanding more than 5000 Go standards before we could start actually manufacturing our components. So this business requires a lot of passion, patience, then only you will be able to do it. And I fully agree with Dr. Pillai that if you are entering into it, you have to really have a long-term vision. We started in 85. It was kind of activities which was shared among all the divisions. It took more than 20 years for us to really have Godrej Aerospace as a separate entity within our organization. Still, it is not a separate organization as such. So it takes a long time. So unless and until you have a large patience and passion towards this, and as he also rightly said, that there is a pride, it's a huge pride when you see that your engine is taking satellite on moon, or your engine is taking a satellite onto Mars, near the Mars, I mean we are not yet landed onto it, or even any other satellite which is going to help us either for our defense services or for our routine communication, or any missile which successfully gets tested and gets inducted. It's a huge pride what you get in getting into it. Second, I will bring the third rather, I will bring it to the skills. You can import, you can buy machines from the domestic manufacturers, you can learn how to do welding, but actually who's going to do the welding? The skilled operators who are required, because you are not allowed to repair anything in this. if you try to do a repair, you are actually going to do more damage to that particular part. Now, I am not talking repair only by welding, but even if you are going to do a repair by machining, if you don't achieve tolerances by machining in the first attempt, and now you are going to reload the component and try to machine it again, the tolerances what we are talking is about 20 microns, and 20 microns to get exactly the same setup like that what we had in the earlier case, and then to bring back the original requirement is going to be more of a difficulty. So the operator has to be really fine tuned to its skills, its capabilities, his mental health. So probably the yoga or the concentration when he is at work, he may be coming with a lot of hassles in traveling, commuting right up to the workplace, maybe having some issues at home. But when he comes at the factory, if he is not removed from all those things and comes into a new environment and produces a component, because always there is a restriction or a limitation on the number of inspections what you can do. The actual operator knows how the component actually has come. So unless and until the operator is in its full complete state of maturity as far as his health, as far as his skills are concerned, producing such components is not going to be that very effective, and you will land up. And all these alloys what I took names, they are very very expensive, they are very costly alloys. And unfortunately, except for Midhani Mishra Dhatu Nigam in Hyderabad, there are not many industries so far in India who are producing it. So we land up into importing all these alloys. So we are paying in dollars, getting these alloys, and if after having a large amount of value add, if those components get rejected, it is going to be a very very thing. So we focused on training. We gave extensive training. We have our own internal training which trains these operators not only in the technical capabilities, but how to really effectively increase his concentration and ensure that his behavior as well as his skills really makes it together to bring right and first time and every time a component. The fourth aspect what I will bring it is on the culture. See, I think as a India, we are not really recognized today in the international market or even for a domestic market. If you go and see made in India onto the any component, and if the same component is having any other, I'm not talking about China or I'm not talking about Europe or US, any other country, especially Japan, Korea and others, you are fascinated, you try to get that part. So the confidence what we have on our own systems is not that good, and I have done some studies on this, and I feel that it is a culture what we have failed to bring into our manufacturing. Now what is that culture I am talking? There are different ways in which the culture can be defined, and I think first is system culture. When we started in the international market doing our business, the first thing what was asked to us is that do you have a system for manufacturing like AS 9100 or at least ISO 9100. If you don't have a system, how are you going to guarantee us the quality? We don't want inspection to say that your quality is good. We want your systems to prove that there is a quality. So first is that we must put systems in place. Working exactly what we have written and doing it what way we have written it there. Second is the quality culture. Now the quality culture, I mean, I'm sorry, but when I have started doing comparison between the Indian systems and the systems abroad, I am finding that it is more, the abroad systems are more oriented towards the process qualifications rather than inspection and inspection and inspection. Today in India, we believe that 3 times inspection is going to get me a good quality. I think we are having a wrong norm, wrong notion, and that has been validated again and again in the auto industry. So we must learn from a successful industry that the self-certification and the pride what we took in saying that my launch vehicle takes satellite into Mars or moon, I think that same pride every operator should be able to take it, that yes, I mean maybe the engine is delivered by Godrej, but this particular part has been made by Mr. Vaidya, and that is why I am very proud for having this. So unless we bring that kind of a pride in every person who's in our operations, will not bring it. So that quality culture has to come as fast as possible. The third culture, what I'm talking is about the productivity. I mean, when we see that we have a labor arbitrage or advantage in India, and we are one of the low-cost territories having good technical capabilities, but when you multiply our hourly rates with the number of items we are able to produce, the productivity turns out to be not that good. And my study shows that if you are really want to benchmark, at least in aerospace, a Polish worker, Poland is one of the best as far as it's the productivity. So we should really look into how they have brought in this kind of a productivity norms in manufacturing. They may not be good in assembly and testing and other things, but as far as the manufacturing is concerned, I think the Polish worker and the Polish systems are extremely good. Then is the innovation. Our difficulty is that we are trying to copy from someone and then try to develop it, but we are not able to really innovate on our own. So interactions with academia, interactions with R&D labs, co-development like what we did with BrahMos. I mean, there are more than 5-6 assemblies what we developed it in a very short span. I mean, when I say short span, it is not few months, it is 4-5 years is a short span in aerospace and defense, and that is what I said, that unless you have a long-term vision and a passion and patience, it is not going to be successful. So we have to bring in the innovations, ideas, and we are trying to copy. I mean, take a simple example of Kaizen. Why should we use Kaizen, a Japanese word, when we want to really improve our own systems? Don't we have a single word in India of our own what we can really say that yes, this is a word and this is what something India is proud for of its own manufacturing? And we are just getting fascinated with all these lean and Six Sigma and Kaizens and all these jargon words, and we try to copy and follow them. I think we should stop that if we want to be successful, whether in space or any other programs, but to really innovate our own and bring our own culture. I mean, we have Vishwakarma, we have so many gods who are actually given us different ideas of doing it. And Dr. Pillai always says that the first missile was made by Tipu Sultan way back in 1800 or 1700 century. So all these good things what we have done, we have forgotten, and we are trying to copy and try to match something what we fascinate from the outside. The next important culture is a safety culture. We take for granted that everything is in order and everything is going as per plan, and then many of our accidents and the safety records are not of that very high standard. So I will advise and urge every one of us to really look into our safety norms to the greatest possible extent. And then there are many other cultures. I don't want to go and consume time, we are already late on this. And last but not the least important, what has been touched by Dr. Pillai also, is the IoT, the Internet of Things, or using sensors. See, we have supervisors still on our shop floor. What is the real role of a supervisor on a shop floor? Just to monitor and allocate work and ensure that the production happens as per the set norms and set practices. Now, that did not require, we can have video cameras, we can have so many different sensors, and like in airports and many other places, we are now able to see every corner and able to take care of our own things, the perimeter security what we have. So similar arrangements can be brought in, and we can really ensure that we will be able to remove supervisors. We don't want supervisor. Everybody will take its own pride in quality, as well as everybody will take its own pride in the quantum of work which is required to be completed. In case of any emergency, button can be pressed. The supervisor or whoever is the decision maker, technical problem solver, quality engineers can run to the shop where it is required, and problem can be solved. So I think what is important is the space opportunities are going to come in a big way. I am personally very, very fascinated that after a lot of waiting time, more than 30-40 years, and especially the last 10 years, we have been talking about it for a long time. So my last advice in this is that, today we should really consider ourselves very fortunate that we have, I mean, not because of the COVID, but because of various things, we are able to communicate very easy. We don't have to travel. We are able to understand sitting remotely in a large country like us. And in such areas, if we start working on a consortium basis, on a collaborative basis, and don't consider our own competition between us. I mean, there are many new entrants who come and try to take our advice. So we are only asking them that, say, for getting into an entry, we don't have to cut prices among ourselves. There are lots of opportunities. Still, I mean, if you take defense sector, 70% of our defense equipments are imported. Similarly, in space, PSLV, GSLV, there are so many areas, sensors and payloads are still being imported. We have a huge opportunity to really look into it. And if we collaborate, if we consortium basis, we work together, I think it will make this policy, which is now getting evolved, a great success. So with these words, I thank you once again, all of you, for giving me this opportunity, and sorry for exceeding my time by 5 minutes, but I thought a comprehensive view of this will be essential before we take up any question answers. So once again, thank you, Fiki, thank you all of you, and my great regards to Dr. Pillai as well as Mr. Vijayanand. Thank you.